Hey y'all, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving deep into a topic that plagues many of us, perfectionism. Now, on the surface, striving for perfection might seem like a good thing, right? Who doesn't love a perfectly organized sock drawer or a flawless presentation? But here's the catch. Perfectionism isn't about simply striving for excellence. It's about the relentless pursuit of an unattainable standard. Perfectionists, bless their hearts, often set impossibly high standards for themselves and others. They're the folks who spend hours agonizing over every little detail, convinced that anything less than perfect is simply not acceptable. And while this drive can lead to some impressive accomplishments, it often comes at a cost. The truth is, perfectionism is a slippery slope. It can morph from a desire for excellence into a fear of failure, a constant need for validation, and an inability to celebrate successes. When you're so focused on what's wrong, you miss out on the beauty of what's right. And let's be real, folks, nobody's perfect. We all make mistakes, we all have flaws, and that's perfectly okay. In fact, it's what makes us human. So how do we break free from the clutches of perfectionism and embrace a healthier, more balanced approach to life? Well, stay tuned, because that's exactly what we're going to unpack in this video. Section 2, The Illusion of Perfection, Why It's Okay to Be a Work in Progress. One of the first steps towards letting go of perfectionism is understanding that it's an illusion. It's a mirage in the desert, shimmering and promising relief, but ultimately leading to more thirst. You see, there's no finish line in the race for perfection because the goalposts keep moving. Think about it. There's always going to be someone out there who's doing something better than you. Someone with a shinier car, a bigger house, or a more impressive Instagram feed. But comparing ourselves to others is a recipe for misery. It's like comparing apples and oranges. They're both delicious fruits, just different. Instead of striving for an unattainable ideal, what if we embraced the beauty of being a work in progress? What if we celebrated our imperfections and saw them not as flaws, but as opportunities for growth and learning? Imagine for a second a world where we gave ourselves permission to mess up, to learn from our mistakes, and to try again without the weight of unrealistic expectations. That's a world I want to live in, folks, and I bet you do too. So let's ditch the illusion of perfection and embrace the messy, beautiful journey of being perfectly imperfect. Now, y'all know I'm all for setting goals and striving for excellence, but there's a fine line between healthy ambition and the kind of perfectionism that leaves you feeling like you're running on fumes. When we're constantly striving for an unattainable ideal, it takes a toll on our mental and emotional well-being. It's like trying to run a marathon at a sprint pace. You might start strong, but you're bound to hit a wall eventually. Perfectionism can lead to chronic stress, anxiety, and even burnout. You're constantly on edge, worried about making mistakes, and never feeling good enough. I remember this one time back in college. I was so caught up in getting a perfect score on a history exam that I stayed up all night cramming. By the time the exam rolled around, I was so exhausted that I could barely remember my own name. Needless to say, I didn't get that perfect score. In fact, I barely scraped by. It was a valuable lesson. Sometimes our pursuit of perfection can actually hinder our performance. So, how do we know when our perfectionism has crossed the line from being a motivator to becoming a burden? Here are a few telltale signs. You're constantly exhausted. You're overly critical of yourself and others. You have trouble relaxing and enjoying life, and you're afraid to even try new things for fear of failure. If any of this sounds familiar, it might be time to rethink your relationship with perfection. Section 2. Trapped in the comparison game, social media's influence. Let's be honest, folks. Social media doesn't exactly help with our perfectionistic tendencies, does it? It's like this curated highlight reel of everyone else's seemingly perfect lives, and it's easy to get caught up in the comparison game. We see the perfectly filtered photos, the witty captions, the exotic vacations, and we start to feel like we're falling short. But what we often forget is that social media is just a snapshot, a carefully crafted presentation of reality, not reality itself. Imagine you're at a fancy dinner party, right? Everyone's dressed to the nines, sipping champagne and making polite conversation. But what you don't see is the chaos behind the scenes. The burnt appetizers, the spilled wine, the arguments before everyone arrived. Social media is a lot like that fancy dinner party. We see the polished facade, but we rarely get a glimpse of the messy, imperfect reality behind it. And yet, we compare our everyday lives to these curated versions of reality, setting ourselves up for disappointment and self-doubt. So, next time you're scrolling through social media and find yourself feeling inadequate, remember that you're comparing your bloopers to everyone else's highlight reel. Give yourself a break, unfollow accounts that make you feel bad, and focus on cultivating your own authentic version of a fulfilling life. Now, this one might surprise you, but sometimes procrastination can actually be a sneaky form of perfectionism. Yep, you heard me right. When we're terrified of making mistakes or not meeting our own impossibly high standards, we might put things off indefinitely. It's like this. We tell ourselves, I'll start that project tomorrow when I have more time and energy to do it perfectly. But tomorrow never seems to come, does it? I used to do this all the time with writing. I'd have a deadline looming, but I'd convince myself that I couldn't possibly start writing until I had the perfect idea, the perfect first line, the perfect everything. Of course, this just led to a whole lot of stress and last-minute scrambling. But here's the thing about perfectionism, disguised as procrastination, it's often rooted in fear. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of not being good enough, and the longer we let that fear paralyze us, the more power we give it. So, how do we break free from this vicious cycle? Well, it starts with recognizing that done is better than perfect. Instead of waiting for the perfect moment or the perfect plan, take that first step, however imperfect it may seem. Remember, progress over perfection always. Perfectionism doesn't just steal our joy, it robs us of opportunities. When we're focused on doing everything perfectly, we might be too afraid to take risks. Imagine you have a chance to audition for a play, but you're worried about not getting the part. So, you don't even bother auditioning, or maybe you have a brilliant business idea, but you're paralyzed by the fear of it not being perfect, so you keep it locked away. Life is too short to let fear dictate our choices. It's in those messy, imperfect attempts that we often discover our true potential. So let's embrace the unknown and chase our dreams. All right, folks. Now that we've explored the downsides of perfectionism, let's shift gears and talk about a much more liberating approach, focusing on progress over perfection. Now, this might sound simple enough, but it requires a fundamental shift in our mindset, a rewiring of those deeply ingrained perfectionistic tendencies. You see, perfectionism often keeps us stuck in a cycle of all or nothing thinking. We believe that if we can't do something perfectly, then there's no point in doing it at all. But life ain't a straight line, y'all. It's more like a winding road with twists, turns, and maybe even a few potholes along the way. Instead of fixating on reaching some elusive finish line, what if we focused on taking small, consistent steps in the right direction? What if we celebrated our efforts, even if they didn't result in picture-perfect outcomes? Think about it like learning to play a musical instrument. You wouldn't expect to pick up a guitar for the first time and play like Jimi Hendrix, right? No, you'd start with the basics, practice regularly, and gradually improve over time. And you'd celebrate each milestone along the way, from mastering a simple chord progression to finally nailing that tricky solo. Now, one of the best ways to shift our focus from perfection to progress is to break down our goals into smaller, more manageable steps. This not only makes the journey less daunting, but also gives us more opportunities to celebrate our wins along the way. Think of it like baking a cake, right? You wouldn't just throw all the ingredients in a bowl at once and hope for the best, would you? No, you'd follow the recipe step by step, celebrating each milestone. The perfect batter consistency, the satisfying rise in the oven, the smooth frosting. It's the same with our goals, folks. Instead of focusing solely on the end result, let's break it down into bite-sized pieces and savor the satisfaction of checking things off our list. Let's say your goal is to write a novel. Instead of overwhelming yourself with the thought of writing a whole book, start with a smaller goal, like writing a page a day. Each completed page is a victory, a step closer to your ultimate goal, and don't forget to celebrate those wins, no matter how small they may seem. Treat yourself to a fancy cup of coffee, go for a walk in nature, or do a little dance of joy, whatever brings you a sense of accomplishment. Remember, progress is a journey, not a destination, so let's enjoy the ride. Progress often involves making mistakes along the way. Those stumbles and fumbles, they're valuable learning opportunities. How many times have you mastered a skill without messing up? Probably not very many, right? Mistakes help us gain insights, identify areas for improvement, and develop resilience. Let's reframe mistakes as stepping stones to growth. When I started making YouTube videos, I made plenty of mistakes. But each time, I learned something new. Those imperfect videos resonated with folks. People relate to authenticity and the shared experience of making mistakes and getting back up again. One of the biggest traps of perfectionism is that it robs us of the joy of the process. We become so fixated on the end goal that we forget to enjoy the journey itself. When you're focused on the top, you miss the beauty of wildflowers along the trail. You miss out on conversations with fellow hikers and the satisfaction of each step closer to your goal. Life isn't about rushing to a finish line. It's about savoring each moment. Find joy in everyday experiences and appreciate the journey. Now, y'all know I'm all about setting goals, working hard, and striving for excellence. But here's the thing. True success, the kind that brings lasting fulfillment, can't be achieved through self-criticism and judgment. It requires a healthy dose of self-compassion. You see, when we're constantly beating ourselves up for our mistakes, comparing ourselves to others, and striving for an unattainable standard of perfection, we create a breeding ground for self-doubt and anxiety. But when we practice self-compassion, when we treat ourselves with the same kindness and understanding that we would offer a dear friend, we create a space for growth, resilience, and inner peace. So how do we cultivate self-compassion, especially when those perfectionistic tendencies start creeping in? Well, it starts with acknowledging that we're all human, we all make mistakes, and that's perfectly okay. Instead of berating ourselves for our shortcomings, let's practice speaking to ourselves with kindness and encouragement. Let's offer ourselves the same grace and understanding that we would offer to someone we love. Remember, folks, we're all works in progress, and that's perfectly okay. In fact, it's in those imperfections that we often discover our greatest strengths and most beautiful qualities. So let's embrace the journey, imperfections and all, and treat ourselves with the compassion and kindness we deserve. All right, folks, now that we've talked about the importance of shifting our mindset from perfection to progress, let's get practical. How do we actually start letting go of those perfectionistic tendencies that have been holding us back? It starts with taking small, actionable steps. One of the simplest, yet most effective things you can do is to start noticing your perfectionistic thoughts. Pay attention to that inner critic that tells you you're not good enough, that you need to do more, be more, achieve more. Once you're aware of these thoughts, you can start challenging them. Ask yourself, is this thought helpful? Is it true? Would I say this to a friend? Chances are the answer is no. So try replacing those negative thoughts with more positive and realistic ones. For example, instead of saying, I have to get this perfect, try saying, I'm going to do my best and that's good enough. Now here's a little trick I learned a while back that has worked wonders for my own perfectionistic tendencies, the done list. We often get so caught up in our to-do list that we forget to acknowledge and celebrate our accomplishments. So grab yourself a notebook, a piece of paper, or even just a sticky note and start writing down everything you accomplished, big or small. Finish that work project, write it down. Clean the kitchen, write it down. Finally got around to organizing your sock drawer? You better believe you're writing that down. The done list serves as a visual reminder of all the amazing things you've accomplished, even on those days when it feels like you haven't done enough. It's a celebration of progress, a testament to your hard work and dedication. Now this next tip might sound a little radical to my fellow perfectionists out there, but trust me on this one. Embrace the good enough. One of the biggest roadblocks to progress is our insistence on everything being perfect, flawless, without a single hair out of place. But here's the thing about perfection. It's subjective, it's elusive, and it's often unattainable. What one person considers perfect, another might find lacking. So let's give ourselves permission to let go of the need for everything to be perfect. Let's embrace the beauty of imperfection. the charm of the slightly crooked smile, the uniqueness of the hand-painted coffee mug with its uneven glaze. Remember, folks, done is better than perfect. One of the most powerful tools we have in our quest to let go of perfectionism is our self-talk, that inner voice that's constantly chattering away in our heads. Now, for many of us, that inner voice can be pretty harsh, constantly criticizing, judging, and putting us down. But here's the good news. We have the power to change that inner dialogue. We can transform that inner critic into our own personal cheerleader, a source of encouragement, support, and motivation. So how do we do it? Well, it starts with becoming aware of our negative self-talk. Pay attention to the words you use when you talk to yourself. Are they kind, compassionate, and encouraging? Or are they harsh, critical, and judgmental? Once you're aware of your negative self-talk patterns, you can start challenging and reframing those thoughts. Instead of saying, "I'm such a failure," try saying, "I'm still learning, and that's okay." Remember, folks, the way we talk to ourselves matters. And finally, folks, don't be afraid to reach out for support on your journey to letting go of perfectionism. Remember, we're all in this together, and sometimes having a supportive community can make all the difference. Talk to a trusted friend, family member, therapist, or mentor about your struggles with perfectionism. Share your goals, your fears, and your aspirations. Having someone to cheer you on, offer a listening ear, and hold you accountable can provide invaluable support and motivation. Consider joining a support group or online forum where you can connect with others who understand the challenges of perfectionism. Remember, folks, asking for help is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength. From perfectionism to freedom, real-life stories of transformation. Y'all hold on to your hats, because now we're going to dive into some real-life stories, tales of folks who stared perfectionism in the face and said, "Not today, buddy." We're going to meet an artist who learned to let go of the need for every brushstroke to be perfect, an entrepreneur who discovered the power of taking imperfect action, and a student who finally found the joy in learning, not just in acing every test. Their stories are a testament to the transformative power of embracing progress over perfection. So, sit back, relax, and get ready to be inspired by these everyday heroes who dared to let go of perfectionism and embrace the freedom of progress. Now let me tell you about Sarah, a talented artist I had the pleasure of meeting a while back. Sarah, bless her heart, was a classic perfectionist. She'd spend hours, sometimes even days, agonizing over a single painting, convinced that it had to be absolutely perfect before she could show it to anyone. She'd layer on the paint, then scrape it away, then layer it on again, searching for that elusive ideal that existed only in her mind. The problem was, that ideal was like a mirage in the desert, always just out of reach. The more Sarah strived for perfection, the more frustrated and discouraged she became. But then, something wonderful happened. Sarah stumbled upon the concept of wabi-sabi, the Japanese art of finding beauty in imperfection. She realized that true art wasn't about creating something flawless, but about capturing the essence of a moment, the raw emotion, the imperfections that made it real. Next up, we've got Mark, a budding entrepreneur with a head full of brilliant business ideas. Now, Mark was a go-getter, full of energy and enthusiasm, but he was also his own worst critic. He was so focused on launching the perfect product, the one that would blow everyone away, that he ended up procrastinating for months on end. He'd spend hours tweaking his business plan, designing the perfect logo, and agonizing over every detail, convinced that any imperfection would spell disaster. But while Mark was busy perfecting his plan, someone else launched a similar product and cornered the market. That's when Mark realized that done was better than perfect. By embracing imperfect action, Mark was able to get his ideas out into the world, connect with his target audience, and build a successful business. And finally, let me tell you about Emily, a bright and capable student who, like many of us, had fallen into the trap of equating grades with self-worth. Emily, bless her soul, was obsessed with getting straight A's. She'd spend hours studying, poring over textbooks, and stressing over every quiz and exam. She was so focused on the outcome, on getting that perfect grade, that she forgot to enjoy the process of learning itself. But then, Emily took a philosophy class that changed everything. She started to engage with big ideas, to question assumptions, to see the world from different perspectives. She discovered the joy of learning for the sake of learning, not just for the sake of a grade. Don't get me wrong, Emily still cared about her grades, but her focus shifted. She started to see mistakes not as failures, but as opportunities for growth. Well, folks, those are just a few stories of real people who dared to let go of perfectionism and embrace the freedom of progress. Their journeys remind us that true success, the kind that fills our hearts and lights up our souls, is not about achieving some elusive standard of flawlessness, but about embracing the messy, beautiful journey of growth, learning, and self-discovery. So, as we wrap up today's video, I want to leave you with this. Your journey starts now. It starts with taking that first imperfect step, with embracing the good enough, with celebrating your progress, no matter how small. Remember, you don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be willing to show up, to put in the effort, and to keep moving forward one step at a time. Thanks for watching, y'all, and remember to subscribe for more mental wellness tips. Well, folks, we've covered a lot of ground today, haven't we? We've explored the ins and outs of perfectionism, from its sneaky disguises to its potential pitfalls. We've talked about the toll it can take on our mental well-being, our relationships, and even our ability to pursue our dreams. But more importantly, we've discovered the liberating power of embracing progress over perfection. We've learned that true success, the kind that brings lasting fulfillment, is not about achieving some elusive standard of flawlessness, but about embracing the messy, beautiful journey of growth, learning, and self-discovery. We've talked about the importance of shifting our mindset from all-or-nothing thinking to embracing the good enough. We've learned to celebrate our small wins, to view mistakes as opportunities for growth, and to cultivate self-compassion as we navigate the inevitable ups and downs of life. You see, perfectionism often keeps us trapped in a cycle of self-doubt, comparison, and fear of judgment. We're so busy trying to live up to some external standard of what we think we should be that we lose sight of who we truly are. But here's the thing. Our imperfections, those quirks and flaws that make us unique, are also what make us interesting, relatable, and undeniably human. When we embrace our imperfections, we give ourselves permission to be authentically ourselves, and that's a beautiful thing. When we let go of the need to be perfect, we create space for genuine connection, for meaningful relationships, and for a deeper sense of self-acceptance. Now, I know letting go of perfectionism can feel daunting, especially if you've been clinging to it for a while. But here's the thing. It doesn't have to be an overnight transformation. It's a journey. A process of unlearning old patterns and embracing new ways of thinking and being. And like any journey, it starts with a single step. So, what's one small step you can take today to shift from perfectionism to progress? Maybe it's setting a realistic goal for the day, practicing self-compassion when you make a mistake, or simply acknowledging and celebrating a small victory. Remember, progress is not about being perfect. It's about showing up consistently, even when it's uncomfortable, even when you're afraid, even when you doubt yourself. A call to action. Embrace the journey, imperfections and all. So, my friends, I challenge you to embrace the journey of progress over perfection. Let go of the need to have it all figured out, to do everything perfectly, to be the best, the smartest, the most successful. Give yourself permission to be a work in progress, to stumble and fall, to learn and grow along the way. Celebrate your small victories, embrace your imperfections, and never ever give up on your dreams. Remember, you are capable of amazing things, not in spite of your imperfections, but because of them. It's those imperfections, those unique quirks and experiences that shape your perspective, fuel your creativity, and ultimately make you, you. Final thoughts. A world of possibilities awaits. As we wrap things up here, I want you to take a deep breath and visualize the possibilities that await you when you release the grip of perfectionism. Imagine a world where you're free to pursue your passions without the fear of failure, where you can embrace new challenges with curiosity and excitement, where you can celebrate your accomplishments, big and small, without reservation. That's the power of progress, my friends. It's about unlocking your potential, embracing your authentic self, and living a life that's both meaningful and fulfilling. And I, for one, can't wait to see what you achieve when you set yourself free from the shackles of perfectionism and embrace the journey of progress, one imperfect, beautiful step at a time. Thanks for joining me today, y'all, and remember, you are enough just as you are. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and keep on shining.